How's it going, YouTube? Before I get into the video, let me remind you, if you like my content, hit that like and subscribe button. And also, if you feel the need to support me, hit me up on my Patreon at patreon.com/uncommonramen. Capital U, capital R. I do all this in my free time, so any amount of support can help me bring more of this content to you more often. All right, today we're going to take a look at Eruth, Tormented Prophet. This is a blue and a red for a 2/4. If you would draw a card, exile the top 2 cards of your library instead. You may play those cards this turn. So essentially, we're going to try and empty our hand and then go nuts with casts. First thing we're going to do is look at creatures. We got Archmage Emeritus. For 2 and 2 blue, it's a 2/2 with Magecraft. Whenever you cast or copy an instant or sorcery, you get to draw a card. We got Baral, Chief of Compliance. For 1 and a blue, it's a 1/3. Instant and sorcery spells cost 1 less to cast. Whenever a spell or ability you control counters a spell, you may draw a card. If you do, discard a card. Birgi, God of Storytelling. For 2 and a red, it's a 3/3. Whenever you cast a spell, add 1 red mana until end of turn. You don't lose mana as steps and phases end. Creatures you control with boast can boast twice each of your turns rather than once. Sorry. And the backside doesn't matter in this one. Firebrand Archer. For 1 and red is a 2/1. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, Firebrand Archer deals 1 damage to each opponent. Goblin Electromancer. For 1 blue and 1 red, it is a 2/2. Instant and sorcery spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. Gutter Snipe is a 2 and a red for a 2/2. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, Gutter Snipe deals 2 damage to each opponent. Kessig Flame Breather costs 1 and a red, is a 1/3. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, Kessig Flame Breather deals 1 damage to each opponent. Magus of the Bazaar. For 1 and a blue, it is a 0/1. You can tap this to draw 2 cards, then discard 3 cards. Runaway Steamkin. For 1 and a red, it is a 1/1. Whenever you cast a red spell, if Runaway Steamkin has fewer than 3 +1/+1 counters on it, put a +1/+1 counter on Runaway Steamkin. Remove 3 +1/+1 counters from Runaway Steamkin to add 3 red. Sage of the Beyond. For 5 and 2 blue. This is a 5/5 with flying. Spells you cast from anywhere other than your hand cost 2 less to cast. It is Foretell for 4 and a blue. Stormkiln Artist. For 3 and a red is a 2/2. It gets +1/+0 for each artifact you control. It has Magecraft. Whenever you cast or copy an instant or sorcery spell, create a treasure token. Talrand Sky Summoner. For 2 and 2 blue, it is a 2/2. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, create a 2/2 blue Drake creature token with flying. Third Path Iconoclast. For 1 blue, 1 red, it is a 2/1. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, create a 1/1 colorless soldier artifact creature token. Urabrask. For 2 and 2 red, it is a 4/4 with first strike. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, Urabrask deals 1 damage to target opponent, and you add red mana. For 1 red, you can exile it and return it to the battlefield as a saga. You can only activate that ability as a sorcery, and only if you cast 3 or more instants and or sorceries that turn. Turns into the Great Work. Chapter 1, the Great Work deals 3 damage to target opponent and each creature they control. Chapter 2, create 3 treasure tokens. Chapter 3, until end of turn, you may cast instant and sorcery spells from your graveyard. If a spell cast this way would be put into a graveyard, exile that card instead, and then return the Great Work back to Urabrask. Next up is Wild Magic Sorcerer. For 3 and a red is a 4/3. The first spell you cast from exile each turn has Cascade. Windrider Wizard. For 2 and a blue, it is a 2/2 with flying. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery or wizard spell, you may draw a card. If you do, discard a card. Young Pyromancer. For 1 and a red, it is a 2/1. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, create a 1/1 red elemental creature token. Next up is going to be instants, and as you can imagine, there are quite a few of these. We're going to start with Brainstorm. For 1 blue. Draw 3 cards, and then put 2 cards from your hand on top of your library in any order. Cathartic Pyre. For 1 and a red, choose 1. Cathartic Pyre deals 3 damage to target creature or planeswalker, or discard up to 2 cards, then draw that many cards. Consider for 1 blue, look at the top card of your library. You may put that card into your graveyard and then draw a card. Is it top card? Just top card, yeah. Dangerous Wager for 1 in red, discard your hand, then draw 2 cards. Desperate Ravings for 1 and a red, draw 2 cards, then discard a card at random. Has flashback for 2 and a blue. Desperate Ritual for 1 and a red, add 3 red mana to your mana pool. You can splice this onto Arcane, although I don't think there's anything to splice it on in this deck. We have Frantic Search for 2 and a blue, draw 2 cards, then discard 2 cards, and then untap up to 3 lands. Izzet Charm for 1 blue and 1 red. Choose 1, counter target non-creature spell unless its controller pays 2. Izzet Charm deals 2 damage to target creature, or draw 2 cards, then discard 2 cards. Obsessive Search for 1 blue, draw a card, madness for a blue. Prismari Command for 1, a blue and a red. Choose 2. Prismari Command deals 2 damage to any target. Target player draws 2 cards, then discards 2 cards. Target player creates a treasure token or destroy target artifact. Pulse of the Grid for 1 and 2 blue. Draw 2 cards, then discard a card from your hand. Then, if an opponent has more cards in hand than you, return Pulse of the Grid to its owner's hand. We have Opt for 1 blue, scry 1, draw a card. Pyretic Ritual for 1 and a red, add 3 red to your mana pool. Seething Song for 2 and a red, add 5 red mana to your mana pool. We've got Snap for 1 and a blue, return target creature to its owner's hand, untap up to 2 lands. Thirst for Discovery for 2 and a blue, draw 3 cards, then discard 2 cards unless you discard a basic land card. And then finally we have You Find the Villain's Lair for 1 and 2 blue, choose 1, counter target spell, or draw 2 cards and then discard 2 cards. Okay, next up is going to be Sorceries. Again, this one's going to be a rather large pool of cards. Starting with bonus round for 1 and 2 red until end of turn. Whenever a player casts an instant or sorcery spell, that player copies it and may choose new targets for the copy. Got Breakthrough for X and a blue, draw 4 cards, then choose X cards in your hand and discard the rest. Burning Inquiry for 1 red, each player draws 3 cards, then discards 3 cards at random. Careful Study for 1 blue, draw 2 cards, then discard 2 cards from your hand. Chart a Course for 1 and a blue, draw 2 cards, and then discard a card unless you attacked with a creature this turn. Control of the Court for 1 and a red, draw 4 cards, then put them in your hand? Well, duh. Discard 3 cards at random from your hand. Faithless Looting for 1 red, draw 2 cards, then discard 2 cards. It has flashback for 2 and a red. Gitaxian Probe for 1 Phyrexian blue mana. Look at target player's hand, draw a card. Goblin Lore for 1 red, draw 4 cards, then discard 3 cards at random. Grape Shot for 1 and red, deals 1 damage to target creature, has Storm. Ideas Unbound for 2 blue, draw 3 cards, discard 3 cards at the end of turn. Jessica's Will for 2 and a red, choose 1. If you control a commander, or when you cast this spell, you may choose both. Add red to your mana pool for each card in target opponent's hand, or exile the top 3 cards of your library, and you may play them until this, or you may play them this turn. Mana Geyser for 3 and 2 red. Add red mana to your mana pool for each tapped land your opponents control. Ponder for 1 blue. Look at the top 3 cards of your library, then put them back in any order. You may shuffle and then draw a card. Preordain for 1 blue. Scry 2, then draw a card. Treasure Cruise for 7 and a blue. It has Delve and it's draw 3 cards. And then finally we have Windfall. Each player discards their hand, draws cards equal to the greatest number of cards a player discarded this way. Next up is Artifacts. Starting with Aetherflux Reservoir for 4. Whenever you cast a spell, you gain 1 life for each spell you've cast this turn. Pay 50 life. Aetherflux Reservoir deals 50 damage to any target. Got Arcane Signet for 2. You can tap it to add a mana from your color identity. We have Gear Per Orrery for 4. Each player may play an additional land on each of his or her turns. At the beginning of each player's upkeep, if that player has no cards in hand, that player draws 3 cards. We got Izzet Signet for 2. You can pay 1 and tap this to add a blue and a red. We got Mind Stone for 2. You can tap it for colorless, or you can pay 1, tap it, and sacrifice it to draw a card. Got Mind Splice Apparatus for 3 and a blue. It has Flash. At the beginning of your upkeep, put an oil counter on Mind Splice Apparatus. Instant and sorcery spells cost 1 less to cast for each oil counter on Mind Splice Apparatus. Got File of Galadriel for 3. If you would draw a card while you have no cards in hand, draw 2 cards instead. If you would gain life, when you have 5 or less life, gain twice that much life instead. And you can tap this for 1 mana of any color. Got Sentinel Tower for 4. Whenever an instant or sorcery spell is cast during your turn, Sentinel Tower deals damage to any target equal to 1 plus the number of instant and sorcery spells cast before that spell this turn. We have Soul Ring. Costs 1. You can tap it for 2. Talisman of Creativity costs 2. You can tap it for 1 colorless, or you can tap it for blue-red and have Talisman of Creativity deal 1 damage to you. Next up is Enchantments. Starting with Aria of Flame for 2 and a red. When Aria of Flame enters the battlefield, each opponent gains 10 life. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, put a verse counter on Aria of Flame. It deals damage equal to the number of verse counters on it to target player or planeswalker. Passionate Archaeologist for 1 and a red. Commander creatures you own have, whenever you cast a spell from exile, this creature deals damage equal to that spell's mana value to target opponent. Sorcerer class for 1 red and 1 blue. When Sorcerer class enters the battlefield, draw 2 cards, then discard 2 cards. At level 2 for 1 blue and 1 red, creatures you control have tap to add 1 blue and 1 red, spend the mana only to cast instant or sorcery spells, or to gain a class level. At level 3 for 3, a blue and a red, whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, this spell deals damage to each opponent equal to the number of instant and sorcery spells you've cast this turn. And then we finally, I think, have Lost and the Damned for 1, a blue and a red. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control from anywhere other than your hand, or you've cast a spell from anywhere other than your hand, create a 3/3 red spawn creature token. Is it red and blue or just red? It's just red. Okay. Next up is Planeswalkers. We have Ral Storm Conduit for 2, a blue and a red. It enters with 4 loyalty counters. Whenever you cast or copy an instant or sorcery spell, Ral Storm Conduit deals 1 damage to target opponent or planeswalker. For +2, you can scry 1, and for -2, when you cast your next instant or sorcery spell this turn, copy the spell. You may choose new targets for the copy. And next up is going to be non-basic lands. I'm going to start with Cephalid Colosseum. You can tap this for blue, and it deals 1 damage to you. If you have Threshold, you can tap a blue, tap this and sacrifice it to have target player draw 3 cards and discard 3 cards. Command Tower, which taps for your commander's color identity. Desolate Lighthouse. You can tap this for colorless, or you can pay 1, a blue and a red, and tap this to draw a card and then discard a card. Forgotten Cave enters the battlefield taps for red and cycles for red. Gyreach Sanitarium taps for colorless. You can pay 2 and tap it to have each player draw a card and then discard a card. Lonely Sandbar enters tapped, taps for blue, cycles for blue. Mystic Sanctuary is an island, enters tapped unless you have 3 or more other islands, and when it enters the battlefield untapped, you may put an instant or sorcery card from your graveyard on top of your library. Riptide Laboratory taps for colorless. You can pay 1 and a blue and tap this to return target wizard you control to its owner's hand. Shivan Reef taps for colorless. You can tap it for blue or red and have it deal 1 damage to you. Steam Vents is the shock land for red-blue that has basic land typings. Stormcarved Coast is the check land for blue-red. Sulphur Falls is a check land for blue-red. Temple of Epiphany is a scry land for blue-red. And Training Center is a crowd land for blue-red. And finally, we're going to look at basics. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 islands. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 mountains. So that's going to be the Eruth Tormented Prophet. We're going to try and take advantage of draw triggers and take advantage of things that force you to discard when Eruth is in play, because if you no longer have a hand of cards, you're just going to end up drawing cards with no downside. You can also kind of go nuts when Eruth enters the battlefield, as long as you have ways to create treasures or create mana. So, like, for instance, Urabrask or Stormkiln Artist or Birgi will help you keep maintaining the ability to cast spells. You also have several rituals in here that will allow you to continue to cast spells, which will allow you to continue to draw cards and basically just keep exiling cards from the top of your deck. We have a lot of playing cards from exile payoffs, Passionate Archaeologist probably being the best. And yeah, that's Eruth, Tormented Prophet. If you have any questions or comments, leave them down below. Keep it positive. I will remove negative comments. And yeah, until next time, guys. Peace.